Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be covering a user request. Brian asked if we could select the newest file from a folder and assign it to a variable. So let's hop in. As always, we'll start with our unrun handler. The first thing we'll need is a folder full of files that we'll work with. So I'm going to say set the path to, and I'm going to give it a path to a folder on my desktop called test files. Then we'll say set newest file to, and we're going to write a handler called get newest file, and we'll supply the path that we're working with. And then at the end we'll return that newest file. Now let's hop into creating our handler get newest file. So I'll just create the basic handler here to start with, and I will add my try block and my on error, and then we can put a little place to log an error in the future, and then we'll return nothing when there's an error. Now we're going to be using a shell script for this, so we want our path to be a POSIX path. To do this, I'm going to paste a handler that I created previously called convertPath2, and we'll just leverage that. I'm not going to go into detail about that handler because I've discussed it in a previous video. If you want to learn more about the convertPath2 handler, you can watch the video that I've linked above. Okay, so now we'll use that handler, convertPath2, and we'll convert our path to a POSIX path. This will just ensure that as we use this path in our shell script that it is in the form of a POSIX path. Now that we have our POSIX path, we can say set the file to do shell script, and now we're going to get into a little bit more detail about some of the different shell script commands we're going to use. So the first one we're going to use is ls, so let's go take a look at the man page for ls and learn a little bit more about the ls command. So I'm just going to launch the terminal app, and then we'll type in man for manual and then ls to see the manual for the ls command. So this will give us all the details about the list command or ls command. So it'll list the directory contents, and then we want to use a couple different flags in order to get exactly what we're looking for from this folder. So the one thing we want to do is we want to sort it by the modification time. So we're going to use the -t command, and then additionally when we use the ls command it's going to list folders. So we want to make sure we can identify those folders. So we're going to use the -p command to write a slash after each file name if it's a directory. So let's go ahead and use our ls command. So we'll say do shell script ls-tp to use the two flags we just learned about, and then we'll add our folder path. So we'll say ampersand quoted form of POSIX path. The reason we want to do the quoted form is if our path contains spaces, we need to make sure that the ls command knows that that's one argument, that the entire path is the argument. And you can see in our sample file we do have a space in our name. So this part of the command will give us all of the files and folders that live within our folder. We are not interested in the folders that live in our folder, so we want to exclude those, and that's why we added the p command to our ls command. Next, we're going to pipe the results of the ls command over to another command called grep. So let's look at the man page for grep, which will allow us to filter off any of the results that contain that slash at the end, which are going to be the folders. So here you can see the grep command will allow us to use a file pattern to match contents of the information we're dealing with. So we're going to go down here and we're going to find out that we want to use the -E command. And then next we're going to go down and we'll see that we want to use the -V command, which is also going to allow us to get the reverse of the find set. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for the lines that end with a /, and we're going to then return all the results that don't have the /. That's what the V is going to do for us. So back to our script, we're going to go ahead and write grep -E lowercase v, and then we'll use that / character to say exclude everything that ends with a /. As it stands now, this command will give us all of the files in that folder sorted by their modification time. But if you remember from Brian's original request, he wanted a single file applied to a variable. So to do that, we'll trim this result down using the head command. So if we search for man head, we can see that this will display the first lines of a file, and we'll then say -n to say how many lines we want. In this case, we just want one. So if we go back to our script, we'll be able to see that if we do head -n and then the number 1, that will give us the first line of our result from the previous command. Now we'll say if the file is not equal to blank, then endif. And what we'll want to do here is merge the original path that we had, so our POSIX path, and then we'll add an ampersand and a forward slash, and then we'll add the file that we got from the shell command. When this is done, we'll return the file, and then that will allow us to capture the results of this handler in our variable. Let's go ahead and open up the result pane of our script editor and compile the script and give it a run and see what result we get. So you can see we got a POSIX path back, and this will be the POSIX path of the most recently modified file of our folder. And if we want, we can use our convertPath2 handler to change this back into an HFS path if we prefer. So I'll just copy our handler call, and then I'll say set newest file to, and I'll paste our handler call, and then we'll replace the initial variable with newest file, and then instead of POSIX, we'll change that to HFS. Now when we run this command, we'll get an HFS version of that path rather than the POSIX path that we previously got. And just to show how this works, I'll go ahead and open up the test files folder, and we'll modify the time of one of the files, and we'll run it again and make sure that we're getting the newest file. I'll run a touch command on the ducati.jpg, which will just update the modified time of that file, so that when we run the script again, we should now see ducati.jpg as the most recently modified file. One last thing to note, I didn't properly address the fact that this folder could contain no files, which means that we would produce an error in this case. We would want to deal with that in our if statement, and we would want to add an else and then say set the file to, and then a double set of empty quotes. Special thanks to Brian for submitting this request, and if you have a request too, feel free to add it to the comments of any one of my videos. Thanks so much for watching.